At the completion of my herbal medicine studies, a lecturer asked us a question that completely stopped me in my tracks. She said, if you could only keep 10 herbal remedies in your cupboard, which 10 would you choose? And at the time, when I was asked this question, I had no idea. There were hundreds of herbs, and I was so excited about getting in and using these herbs to help people in treatment plans and everything. There was hundreds of books. There was endless opinions on this, and maybe no two people would ever agree. But having been so interested in traditional herbalism for so long, I realised something surprising when I thought about it. Most ordinary families throughout history, they didn't have access to hundreds of herbs and all the unique ones and the special ones and the ones that you have to grow so carefully. They relied on a small collection of trusted plants that had multiple uses. Even in my treatment plans, I like to keep things really simple for people, not make them feel that it's necessary to have all of these unique and unusual herb treatments, that they're going to work so much better than the basic ones that you could have growing in your garden. So what if you could just go out into the garden and get your medicine? And that's exactly how I now think about creating an apothecary. I always had this word, an apothecary garden, a herbal garden. If I was starting again from scratch, then these are the 10 medicinal plants that I would grow first, not because they're fashionable, not because they're exotic, but because together they create the foundation of a simple and practical home herbal medicine garden. And the best part is that every one of these plants is growing right here in my garden, and I'd love to show them to you. So before pharmacies or chemists and health food stores, and before medicines came in bottles and tablets, people turned to the plants growing around their homes. The old cottage gardens, they weren't just beautiful, they were practical. They fed the family, they attracted pollinators, they seasoned their meals, and quietly, they provided the remedies when they were needed. As I look at these plants today, I often wonder how many generations before us relied on these plants before we have even thought about it again. And when I look at the herbs that I'm going to be recommending for you, I see them falling into 3 groups. There's protectors, healers, and restorers. So today I'm taking you out into my garden and I'm going to give you a really brief explanation about why I'm making these recommendations. In other videos that I'm going to create, I will give you more explanation and I'll be more specific about why I recommend these plants and what you can do with them and how simple it is to grow them and how you can make the best of them using them in your daily life, especially to support the health of your body. So let's begin with the protectors and let's go out in the garden. So protectors are the plants that people reached for whenever they wanted to stay well or support the body during illness or just deal with everyday mishaps before they became big problems. And you know, if I had to pick one medicinal herb, then garlic would be way up there, probably as one of my first.
Garlic is one thing that I grow in pot because with my soil, it doesn't really thrive in the garden.
For thousands of years, garlic has been revered as both food and medicine. You know, families, they put it in their soups during winter, and herbal traditions around the world, they value garlic as a plant that helps support resilience during times of illness.
And the wonderful thing about garlic is that it's simple. Simple to plant, simple to leave grow.
You harvest it, you can store it, and then eat it whenever you're ready. And sometimes, you know, the most powerful remedies, they're simple plants. And then there's that powerful little herb thyme. You know, it may be small, but it carries a powerful history. It's been used as a culinary herb and also a medicinal herb for, again, who knows how long. If you had a cold and you're experiencing difficulties in getting rid of that last of it off your chest, in your throat, then it's really powerful in supporting your body to get rid of it, to loosen it. So have that as a herb tea. You know, I love that thyme, it just bridges the gap between the kitchen and your medicine garden. 1 minute it's flavouring your dinner and the next minute it's steeping in a really comforting and actually quite tasty cup of tea. What I'm going to show you next, it's one of the most overlooked medicines in our modern world. You probably walk past it every day and just don't realise how important this is. So wideleaf plantain, our ancestors knew this plant very well. It's used for cuts, scrapes, bites, stings. You can create an infusion for skin irritations and even respiratory support. If someone was stung by a bee, then there was a good chance that a fresh plantain leaf would be crushed and applied to that sting straight away. And, it's the perfect example of a plant hiding in plain sight. So that's the wide leaf. So this is ribwort. This is the narrow leaf plantain. So if you were anywhere really and you cut yourself, you can break off a leaf of this, chew it, put it on your cut, and it will help support your body in reducing the amount of blood loss and healing that. So the next part of the healers, and these are the plants that people look to for repair and comfort when they're recovering. So calendula is one of my most cheerful plants in the garden at this time of the year. The bright golden flowers, they seem to bring sunshine wherever they grow. Calendula is far more than just a beautiful flower. For generations, herbalists have valued it for skin support, minor wounds and irritations, and for gentle healing. If there's one flower I recommend that every beginner grow, then calendula would have to be at the top of this list. It's easy, it's productive, it's really useful, and also once it goes to seed, then you'll never have any problems of it not growing in your garden anywhere. Yarrow has earned its place in herbal history. Soldiers carried it, travellers relied on it, and of course herbalists relied on it deeply. So traditionally, this little herb is associated with wounds, fevers, circulation and recovery. Yarrow became one of the great first aid herbs of folk medicine. Usually it has a really tall white flower that you can harvest as well. It's a beautiful reminder that some of the strongest plants often grow in the harshest of conditions. And of course, you can see a little dandelion trying to grow in there as well. And we'll talk about dandelion shortly. If there's one plant that people are surprised about when they first start learning herbal medicine, it's usually comfrey, otherwise known as neckbone, for obvious reasons. But I'll tell you a bit more about it. So this is just some of my comfrey. You can see that it plays a huge part in my garden. For generations, comfrey was used externally for bruises, sprains, strains, tissue support. At one stage, it's been used internally, but we're not allowed to do that anymore. So I love comfrey for another reason, and the reason I have so much of it is that chooks love it, but also I harvest the leaves a few times a year and put it in with the compost, and it just really adds to the nutrition of my compost. I feel it's one of the hardest working plants in my garden. When it flowers, a tall purple flower, bluey purple flower, then the bees love it, and obviously my compost loves it, and herbalists, of course, have loved this little plant for centuries. And of course, now I'd like to teach you about the restorers. Firstly, we'll look at stinging nettle. This is a dreaded herb. I know a lot of people hate it. They feel that as soon as they go near it, then it creates allergies. But it's an incredibly nutritious plant. Our ancestors often saw this plant as a food, and it's long been valued as a nourishing herb. It's rich in minerals, and traditionally, it's been used as a spring tonic. Now, around my place, it grows through winter, and this is when I harvest it, usually before it goes to seed. And when I think of nettle, I think of rebuilding, supporting vitality, and it's just helping your body regain strength after a difficult season. So this can often be really beneficial for older people who've been through a really tough time and they're trying to rebuild their strength. It's one of the most generous plants that nature provides. Just be a little bit careful how you handle them. Some people, like I say, react badly to it. I find probably over years of using it, I don't have a reaction as badly, but just be careful handling it. If you need, then wear gloves. And of course, my garden, it's full of weeds, what people would consider as weeds. But they're all medicines. They're all herbs that I can use. for some sort of medicinal benefit. Now, dandelion, at the moment, my garden is prolific with the flower. And this is one of the few plants that suffered from modern misunderstanding. There's nothing quite like poor dandelion. And today it's often pulled out of lawns. Historically, though, it was treasured. The roots, the leaves, the flowers, they all found their place in traditional herbal practice. Dandelions became closely associated with digestion, with liver support, and the idea of spring renewal. And every time I see these bright yellow flowers, I'm reminded that some of our most valuable medicines are often dismissed as weeds. So in my garden, dandelions are revered as they become a huge part not only of my tonics but of my bitters. I know I say this about almost every herb, but lemon balm is almost one of my favourite. So my lemon balm needs a little prune back, but it has a gentle and uplifting nature that people have appreciated for centuries. Traditionally, it's used to calm the nervous system, support your digestion, and just encourage a sense of balance and well-being. You know, when you pluck off a leaf and just crush it in your hands, it has such a beautiful lemony smell. It's one of those plants that just seems to improve your mood just by having a cup of tea. And now we've got to number 10, and I couldn't go past rosemary. So rosemary has been cherished for generations as a herb for memory, vitality, and longevity. It thrives in difficult conditions, and it asks for very little in return. Now, for centuries, it's found its way into kitchens, to medicine cupboards, and celebrations even for everyday life. If I had to choose one herb that symbolises resilience, then rosemary would be way up there as a strong contender. It's strong, fragrant, useful, and it's enduring. So when I first began learning herbal medicine, I thought that I would have to have hundreds of varieties of plants just to be able to provide for what I needed. And I have ended up with hundreds of plants. But what I've learnt now is that it isn't about having everything. It's about having the right things. So these 10 plants, they might not do absolutely everything, but together they create a really good foundation. The protectors help us stay well. The healers are going to support recovery, and the restorers rebuild strength and balance. And that's exactly what the old cottage gardens did for hundreds of years. They quietly supported everyday life. And perhaps that's the lesson they still have to teach us today. So if you're planning on creating your own cottage medicine garden, let me know what you're planting. Put some comments in the comment section below, and I'd love to hear.